Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
See, that's 3:30, so we'll begin our meeting. My name is Jeff Janowski. I'm the Vice Chair of the Ethics Board. Jack Marsh, our Chair, is traveling. He has called in to participate, but I will run and conduct the meeting today. Carrie, can I have you call a roll to begin?
Yep. Jeff Godlowski.
Here.
Wanda Harris. Here. Greg LaFollette.
Here.
Jack Marsh.
On the phone?
Sue Roust. Here.
Great. We have a quorum, so we can begin. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of our March 29th, 2018 meeting. That was circulated to the members by Carrie. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Motion carried. Minutes are approved. The next order of business is to approve the written advisory opinion drafted by Acting City Attorney Carrie Leonard. This is opinion 18-1. It was also distributed to members of the committee by Carrie. Do I have a motion to approve the advisory opinion?
I move.
So moved.
In a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? I have, even though I'm acting chair, I do have one suggested revision to the opinion. I have a copy of that suggested change. I can provide it. And I'll give this to you, Carrie. This is on the second page, under the paragraph that's titled Standards of Conduct. That last sentence of that paragraph that reads, "The board finds the council member needs her. It's not violated the provisions of this sections." My change would be to add a semicolon, rather comma, "he was," and then have it read, "researching constituents' questions or concerns regarding this type of TNC as compared to other TNCs." It's really adding the, in his testimony, he talked about researching and responding to certain questions.
So Jeff, you're simply trying to provide context, is that what you're trying to do here?
Correct. He was conducting his own individual research from what I recollect, and I thought that captured the testimony that he provided.
I move the amendment.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, a vote on the amendment. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion is carried, and now I believe we need to go back to the original motion and move to adopt or accept the advisory opinion with the amendment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, motion carried.
So Karen, if you would draft a revised, draft that revision, I'll stop by your office and sign that next week.
Okay, that works for us.
Okay, we will move on now to new and pending issues. We have one new piece of business. Councilor Stehly has asked us for an advisory opinion on a number of different questions. I want to say first that she has waived confidentiality, so we'll have this matter in an open hearing. Carrie, what I'd like you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is to read the request for an advisory, an advisory opinion for the group.
Certainly. All right. I am requesting that the Ethics Board provide guidance to the following. Number one, my right to circulate a Sioux Falls Municipal Citizen petition. This could be an initiative, referendum, or charter revision effort. Number two, my right to lead a Sioux Falls Municipal Citizen Petition Drive. This could be an initiative, referendum, or charter revision effort. 3, my right to participate in a county, school district, or statewide initiative, referendum, petition effort. Number 4, my right to lead a county, school district, or statewide initiative, referendum, petition effort. Number 5, my right to circulate nominating petitions for other city council candidates. Number 6, my right to circulate nominating petitions for school board, county, and state candidates. I am requesting that these inquiries be addressed within 45 days.
Before we begin to discuss the request, Karen, I believe you have a packet of information you've made available to the public. And you want to pass that out also to the members of the board.
Yes, for the record, I would just like to identify what I'm passing out. I put together various advisory opinions, ethic ordinances, and rules of procedure for the Board of Ethics. And so first in the packet is the rules of procedures for the Board of Ethics to follow. Second would be advisory opinion 13-2. Third, I enclose ethic canons, canon 3 as found in ordinance 34005, canon 6, 34008, and canon 7, which is 34009. I also enclosed advisory opinion by this board of 07-1, advisory opinion 06-1. I also included the ordinance entitled Standard of Conduct for City Council Members, which is found at section 35054 of the ordinances of Sioux Falls. I also enclosed the Code of Conduct of South Dakota State Legislators. I enclosed the advisory opinion 14-2, and I attached 2 charter provisions, 7.01, 7.02, and I also made reference to state law involving initiatives and referendums and the number of votes or a number of signatures required, and that is found at SDCL 9-20-1 and 9-20-8.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes.
Before we invite Councilor Stehly to provide a statement, I wondered if we could just talk about how we'd like to structure this. As I see this, I see a fundamental question on whether or not this is right for an advisory opinion by the board, or if it's requesting hypothetical responses or responses to hypothetical matters. And then separately, if we overcome that, perhaps talk about how we would like to divide up, if you will, the 6 different requests. It appears at first blush that we have 2 that are related to municipality or municipal matters. The others are county, school, and state. And the third is then for nominating positions for either city council or school board, county, and state. Any thoughts?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a thought. The rules that govern our committee specifically say no hypothetical questions will be considered by the board. So I struggle with the word hypothetical and what that means. I did some serious research, and it is, as ethics are, principles driven, not rules driven. So there is no bright line that says this is hypothetical and this is not hypothetical. It is it's a matter of opinion, as all ethics are. Laws are rules based. When I look at the 6 items, I actually divided them, Mr. Chair, differently than you did. I looked at number 1 that uses the verb circulate. That same verb is used in number 5 and number 6. I can deal with the word circulate because it is, in my opinion, I think, precise enough to rise beyond the threshold of hypothetical. The words lead and lead and participate are, in my opinion, vague enough that they don't reach the threshold of escaping hypothetical. So I would propose that we bifurcate the 6 items and deal with number 1, number 5, and number 6 separately, the ones that use the verb circulate, and we deal with those, and then we take 2, 3, 4, and 5, or 2, 3, and 4, I guess, and deal with them separately. So I would, and I'll wait to put that in motion form so that we can discuss more.
Other thoughts from the members?
I had similar concerns about hypothetical, and I was doing the same thing that you did, Greg, in terms of looking at the words. And then I thought perhaps in our information gathering, we could find out if this was in reference to a specific situation. And maybe then make our decision based on what we find as we gather more information from the council member. But I do like your reasoning about the words circulate. The one I had a problem with was participate in. That seemed very general to me. So I would agree with you, Greg.
Greg, forgive me, just if you could clarify, I'm just trying to follow along here. So the 2 that you would set aside are number 2, number 3, and number 4. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Saying that we would not weigh in on those because they could be deemed to be hypotheticals.
No, Jack, that was not my intent. What my intent was to simply to bifurcate the 6 so that we could discuss the 3 that use the word circulate separately from the other 3 that use verbs like lead and participate. I'm not ready to suggest that we make a decision on either one, but I think they are different enough that the discussion would be, our discussion would be more fruitful if they were separate.
I would concur with that.
Okay. I have a slightly contrary look at this. I don't make that strong distinction between circulate and participate. Circulate to me just is a different word for participating in whatever endeavor I've engaged. How I draw the distinction between the 2 is going to be based on the facts. And when I look at the rules that we have to abide by, is the question presented to us has to be specifically factual for us to give an informed advisory opinion. And without those factual backdrop, we are giving, or potentially could give, a blanket opinion on something that's going to change down the road based on the facts. And I can give you a number of examples that could impact it. I think part of it, though, is going to really depend on the testimony of Councilor Stehly for us to be able to set that backdrop up to know whether or not this is a hypothetical question or one that is truly asking for an advisory opinion on a real-life situation. And I pulled one of these prior opinions that occurred a while ago. It's number 07-1, in which there was a similar request made around the use of a parks board and the involvement of the park citizen members of the park and the council. And the ethics committee at that time decided to offer an opinion on a portion of it, but was very careful to say that we're not going to engage in hypothetical what-ifs without the true factual backdrop to be able to understand what the request is. And that's my caution as I read through this, and I understand the distinction between the words you've raised, Greg, but I don't know that those divide the situation up enough for me to be comfortable.
Yeah, and I think, well, I'm sorry, so go ahead.
I would tend to agree with Greg on this. The words circulate a petition are very specific. The law is very detailed and specific, also in the state administrative rules, about what exactly the role is of a circulator, what they must do. The fact that it all revolves around the piece of paper with a petition on it. The circulator must observe people signing signatures. The circulator must attest before they submit the petition that they witnessed every signature, that they are a legitimate circulator. It's a very limited thing. And I tend to look at that word circulate. I know exactly what a petition circulator is, and I know the very limited role they have. Whereas the lead and participate include a ton of things, like advocating for or against something, providing financial support, organizing volunteers. A circulator is one person walking around with a piece of paper getting signatures. And so that's why I tend to think the two are separate, that circulator is not a broad category. And to me, saying, may I circulate a petition, I don't need to know the subject of the petition, I don't believe. So to me, that part of it is not a hypothetical. It's, if somebody hands me a petition, can I carry it around and get signatures? And it really is immaterial who it's for or what issue it's for. So that would be my viewpoint.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I want to go back. I'm going to put in motion form my thought that I move that we bifurcate this issue into two sections. The first dealing with numbers 1, 5, and 6, and the second question dealing with numbers 2, 3, and 4. That motion, by the way, does not include whether or not we happen to approve the one or not. It's just that we have the discussions separate from one another. So that's a motion.
Do we have a second?
I'd second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Can we take a vote? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? All right. I believe that our next step will be to ask Councilor Stehly to come up and provide us with an opening statement.
We're going to deal with, at this point, we're dealing with which question? The circulate question?
We can break it
We
down.
have
into
two questions, that was the motion.
Yeah, we can break it into both and do circulate
Let's
first.
talk, well, I would suggest we talk about them separately, that was the motion. So, whichever one.
Just
One
one
five.
second. We have to put Ms. Stehly under oath.
Correct, I was just going to say that
Okay.
before we, yes, please.
Are we ready? Do you solemnly affirm that the evidence you shall give relative to this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, under the penalties of perjury?
I do.
So Councilor Stehly, just to restate, under the motion that was just approved, we would like you to address the council on items numbers 1, 5, and 6.
And then are 2 and 3 and 4 going to be addressed later?
We will address
Okay.
that separately.
And so I don't get to give an opening statement about why I'm here? Do I get to?
You can proceed as you'd like.
Okay.
We want to focus though as.
I understand, and let me say, our city legislative person helped me put this together. This is a first step, so as I'm hearing you talk about the language, I apologize because I meant to say my right to circulate. It's not about, participating to me meant circulation, gathering signatures. So if I may need to come back and restate this, and I'm happy to do that. Let me first of all say that I did talk to the media about what I'm doing today because I wanted them to understand that I requested this meeting. I have not been summoned here because of any ethical violation of my behavior. So just so you understand why I had a press conference about this yesterday. I'm doing this because, as you may know, I've been very active as a citizen these past years in petitioning processes in our city, 2 successful initiatives. And I was a leader of those. I led that. So I use the word leader. I don't know what other word I would use, and maybe I'll get that from here if I have to restate this, resubmit it. But if somebody who is a leader of the petition drive, they sign their name on the form with whatever registration entity is. They're taking authority over overseeing a petition drive. I have been inspired by other elected officials who have done petition drives. And that's why I'm saying to myself, as an elected official, what are my rights? That's why I'm coming to you, because I would rather get this out in the open now and get your opinion than to start a petition drive or collect signatures in a petition drive and then have someone bring an ethics violation against me, and that would put a huge dark cloud over the whole effort. It would discourage citizens from participating and have a big question mark there. So I was just hoping to get as much information from you as I could before I would step into anything like that. And let me say, there are things at the state level that have concerned me. I'd love to help with that. I'd love to lead a petition drive statewide. I'd love to gather signatures statewide. School district wide, I helped them a few years ago with that school start date. So, I mean, I'm an involved kind of person, so I want to find out what I can do ethically as your city council member. So what I included in your packet was the inspirational efforts by our Speaker of the House, Mark Mickelson, last summer. He collected signatures. It's going to be on the ballot in November. He's a legislator. He was out there. He told me he worked hard. It was a huge effort. And here's a guy who's in leadership within that elected body who's able to go and do this. So I thought that was kind of cool. Secondly, I included information from the Argus Leader about the county commissioners initiated measure that happened, I believe, in 2008. Dime a drink initiated measure. Ann Hayek, the county commissioner at the time, approached me to sign her petition. The information I gave you references Carol Tweet talking about that. They weren't successful in gathering enough signatures, but here we have elected county officials leading a petition drive. Kind of cool. Thirdly, I have in your packet just the results of that school board election I told you about, where we were voting on the school start date. Our own council chair, Christine Erickson, was very involved in that petition drive. She even reached out to me for help as a citizen with that. So here we have an elected city council member participating in a school district petition drive. And last but not least, let's talk about my colleague and dear friend Kermit Stagers, who actively circulated petitions with the Drake Springs petition drive that I led and the Snowgates petition drive. So we have a history of people within our community who are elected who are doing that activity. So once again, I just wanted to bring it to you now. I'm not saying specifically what I would do. I might want to help with the charter revision petition drive at some point. That I brought some things before them and was told that the next step, because they didn't want to put it on the ballot. So they said we could put it to a petition drive. Now, is that me or is it somebody else? I want to know, I want from you, I was hoping you would say, yes, Theresa, we think that's ethical for you to circulate. Maybe you'll say, no, you can't lead it, but you can circulate. Whatever you say, I'm going to respect, okay? But that's why I put a whole spectrum of options down there, because is it okay for me to help John Doe get signatures for his city council race, or is it not? I just don't want this to become an issue in the midst of something I'm doing. I'd rather be proactive. So, and I'm listening to what you say. So if you say, Theresa, we need a topic. And I liked what Sue Rouse said, that the subject really shouldn't be the issue. So I guess I could come back and just find a subject and say, well, could I do this? And then hopefully, let's say it was a charter revision issue, then you could say yes or no, and then that would affect any charter revision activity I would do. So again, this is a starting point. It's been on my mind for a long time, and I really appreciate your considering this. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Do we have any questions from the board?
I have none.
Theresa, Councilor Stehly, sorry. When you mentioned that you wanted to be engaged in circulating the petitions, what do you envision circulating to mean?
Gathering signatures.
And not as an advocate, just simply?
No, I'm not questioning if I can be an advocate. And I'm sorry if that wording is misleading on that. Because I think that I'm not even gonna ask you if I can advocate for something, because I believe that we've already been doing that. But if I can give you an example of what happened after we were elected, we had a petition drive led by Mr. Danielson here, for the administration building. And so Attorney Fifley told me behind closed doors at that time that I should probably not be involved with that. And so I didn't. I wasn't involved. Didn't gather any signatures. I think I signed it. I have a right to do that. But I've since talked with other attorneys across the state who've said, whoa, they can't tell you you couldn't have a petition and get signatures from people. Those are your rights as an individual. So I will be very disappointed if we say statewide in the city of Sioux Falls that our city council members have less rights than Mark Mickelson as a legislator or the county commission does. But once again, I'm going to obey what you say.
Do you see any distinction or difference between your opportunities as a city councilor in a city referendum or initiative as opposed to those who are state legislators or county for a statewide initiative or referendum?
Okay, run that by me.
Sure. Is there any difference, do you think there's any difference between your opportunities or rights as a city councilor involved in a city-led or cities-focused initiative or referendum as opposed to one that you might be involved with that's state?
That I would be involved in?
Yes.
Well, and that's, well, excuse me. I would, that's why I'm asking you. I mean, I'm saying, well, you might say, well, Theresa, we don't want you to do anything citywide, but yeah, you could lead a petition drive to overturn some of those initiatives that they put through last session, which I would like to do, by the way, because I think that it was heavy-handed on the citizens. Nonetheless, so that's what I'm saying again. I'm asking you, I'm a city councilor, what would you think about me leading a statewide initiative to do something like that? And I'd rather say it now than, and maybe what you're going to say is, Theresa, you got to come back again once you got something happening, but I don't want to go to the work of implementing and organizing and then come in and ask you and then you tell me I can't do it. So
Ms. Stehly, I have a
yes.
question. The examples that you give, Mr. Mickelson and Hayek and
Right.
Tweet, they are all valuable examples, and I'm not sure that they're not pretty much on point. My question is, do you have any knowledge of any of those people seeking an advisory ethics opinion prior to their actions?
No, but I don't know what advisory, even the county commission doesn't really have an advisory for it. See,
That's why I'm
they're
asking.
kind of unique, and I don't think the state, we tried to implement an ethics thing, and I got kind of ripped apart and dissected and disappeared, I think. So they don't have this kind of a board.
None of those examples, was there an ethics opinion sought.
Right.
Sometimes because there's no mechanism.
Right.
But that makes
Right.
it different than what we're looking at here, in my opinion. Those did not have, and just because you do something and no one complains does not mean that it's ethical.
Right.
And just because somebody complains, does not mean it's unethical either.
Right.
Yeah.
But in Sioux Falls, city councilors have an ethics board they have to address. And anyone could, if I do something, an ethics violation could be filed, and then it, like I said, it becomes an issue I deal with. And So I want to get this out in the open, it's transparent, it's, I want to help citizens any way I can. And so I'm asking now versus later, so.
Councilor Stehly, are you aware of the state having any either statutes or rules that are similar to the ones that we have in place for the city, on either an ordinance or a canon of ethics?
I don't know, but I would say that Mark, if Mark Mickelson doesn't know what those are, nobody does. I mean, because he did it, and I'm gonna say, hey, Mr. Mickelson acts with integrity, and I'm not gonna say he did something he shouldn't have been doing. I'm sure he checked it out.
And that's a fair point. And my question is probably a little broader than that. Perhaps it's such that I haven't focused on the state statutes, because that's not so as relevant to me right now, but perhaps the state doesn't have a similar restriction, or they don't have a rule of ethics or an ordinance that is similar to the Sioux Falls one, so that the issue doesn't arise for a state legislator.
Right, because they don't see the necessity to have some kind of an ethics parameter to work with it.
Or the rules are different. The rules could be written differently.
Or they just have more rights than we do here in Sioux Falls. There's just more flexibility, there's more openness, you know, within.
Is there a specific either ordinance or provision of the ethics that you've read that you're more concerned about, that you want us to focus on? In other words, is there something that's triggered this request to come and ask us? Have you read anything?
Well, no, what's triggered it is just this conversation I had when I got sworn in the midst of this intense petitioning thing by our city attorney Fifley, who, by the way, I also want to tell you, I had to hire my own attorney to go in with Mr. Fifley to stand for my rights, because I was being told I couldn't advocate for citizens anymore. I was elected. Don't let the tail wag the dog. You're not a citizen advocate. And so that was something that I had to pay an attorney to go in and stand for my rights. And you shouldn't have to do that, but I did. And after I did that, he just disappeared. And now he's really disappeared. So I'm just saying, this has been an issue as a city councilor, is to stand for our right to operate in the community to help citizens. And I've been doing it, and I'm going to continue to do it. And I got gavelled because of it, and I don't care. I'm going to help people, and sometimes the only way people's voices are heard is if we bring something to a vote.
So I have a question along those
Okay.
lines. It's kind of, I have no legal background and not a lawyer,
Okay.
and so I really appreciate what Mr. LaFollette said earlier about ethics or principles, not necessarily rules driven,
Right.
and that's kind of what I'm struggling with as we look at all this information and all the laws and ordinances. So I'm just curious, so obviously you are interested in service and serving people, and I think you were kind of going down this path, but I'm curious about your motivation to want to also become involved in petitions and drives and circulating for signatures. How does that differ from your service in a legislative manner? How does that differ from your service on the city council?
Well,
Because I'm kind of thinking
it's
you're
to
serving
me,
already, and you
exactly,
want to do
but
more,
it's
and
another-
I'm trying to understand that.
It's another tool that can be used to help to provide for legislation. And I will tell you, I got 2 ordinances passed as a citizen. We built the Drake Springs pool, and we did snow gates. And the council was never going to go for that. And so I, as a citizen, said, you know, this is an important thing, and we collected 8,400 signatures, and we put it to a vote. So sometimes the legislative body gets kind of bogged down and doesn't always want to move. So another way of doing that is doing, you know, circulating a petition. And I think there are other instances. I talked with the mayor of Bismarck. He's the one who started the petition drive for snow gates, which was my inspiration. So here we have a municipality where he's allowed to do those things. And it could be that I could just do it and nothing would ever happen. But again, I'm trying to get this out in the open now, before I do something. if I do. And for an example, the Board of Ethics, I went before them and I wanted them to implement this park board idea. I believe it was the park board. I had proposed a park board districting thing, and the park board didn't like it. A lot of citizens did, and the council voted it down, and then I took it before the charter revision, and they said, we're not going to deal with that. So my next option is I could get the council to put it on the ballot, which there wasn't an appetite for that. So then you say as a council member, well, that's the end of the road. Or we have one more avenue, which is to do a petition drive for that. Can I do that? I mean, it was my idea, my energy. Can I get out there and start circulating petitions to get that on the ballot? Or can I not?
Councilor Stehly, I have a couple other questions. And help me here, because I may not know the answers, so you might. In a petition drive, and let's just focus only on circulating, you would be a person who would present those petitions to a number of individuals and obtain their signatures. You would attest that you watched them and the dates and the things of that sort, similar to what you said earlier.
Yeah.
Those then get presented to who? Who needs to verify?
Well, then you have it notarized.
Notarized.
Mhm.
And who ultimately reviews those signatures to ensure that they are valid?
The city clerk's office.
Okay. And the city clerk is hired by who?
It's under the authority of the city council.
So the city council hires the city clerk, and the city clerk is the one who's entrusted to do sampling methodology to attest to the validity of signatures.
Right.
Do you think, under one of the canon rules, there is the necessity to stay away from the appearance of impropriety? And I'm not saying the clerk's going to do anything wrong, so don't take this in
Right.
the wrong way. But given the fact that you're a counselor and the clerk is hired by the council, and the council, or the clerk has to validate signatures a council member has obtained, does that concern you at all as perhaps raising the appearance of impropriety?
No, because validating signatures is black and white. I mean, I went in and looked at them on my other petition drives, and the clerk showed me, Theresa, this one isn't valid because this person didn't put the date on here. I mean, it's black and white. He's not sitting there saying, well, I think I don't. It's pretty straightforward. So I would say, I can't go in and say to Tom Greco, you validate all those signatures.
Well, no, I'm not implying that you would say anything like that at all. I'm just saying that there is a reporting structure from the clerk to the council.
But let me just say, in nominating petitions, same thing. I got 720 signatures when I ran, and I gave them to him. So, or let's just say someone running for re-election, Christine Erickson just did. She's handing those in, she's his boss, he has to validate those. What would be the difference? Signatures.
I think I've heard, and if you don't know the answer to this, but typically, to be safe, you have to get many more signatures than the bare
Right.
minimum, because some get thrown out
That's
for
right.
varieties of reasons. Okay.
Black and white reasons. Okay, and I needed 200 to be elected, I got 720. We needed about 6,000 for that petition drive, we got 8,400. So we always got more. But again, they are very specific about showing you exactly why a signature is not accepted. There's not a black and white there. They left the date off, and I mean, they can be pretty picky too, this person didn't have exactly this, and if, I wouldn't want to be treated any differently than anyone else, but that's why we have things go to the Secretary of States are taken to court, because they'll throw things out and people challenge it all the time. But nonetheless, if I can just separate these. So let's just say you say, well, we don't like you doing anything because of the clerk's relationship. That's one thing. But then we have, what about the state thing? What about the school district thing? And that's, again, where I'd like you to, I like you pulling those apart and saying, well, whatever you do over there, that clerk element doesn't come into it.
That brings up a separate question. I like the distinction between the city, which carries certain, perhaps, limits that might not exist if you were involved in a state referendum. But in each instance, isn't it true that it depends on the facts? Because, for example, you can't have a pecuniary or financial interest in the outcome.
Right.
And without knowing that, how can we as a board sit here today and give you an approval to participate in a program in which there's no factual backdrop? We're guessing, it's a hypothetical.
Well, yes, but even if you made a judgment that said, maybe there needs to be, if you have an advisory opinion saying, we don't see a problem with petitioning as long as that council member is not benefiting, We have the same thing when it comes to recusing ourselves for an issue. You can't have a financial stake. Which, by the way, someday I'll come before you, we're going to talk about what do we do on grounds of recusal? Because right now it's very loose. You can be working for someone and voting on that issue that's going to benefit your employer, and you don't have to recuse yourself. I've always recused myself when USF comes up. I work there. But again, there's really nothing stringently set, and I don't know if you're the group that's going to do that. But anyway, coming back, anything you say, I'm listening to it.
Councilor Stehly, the rules as they exist today and the canons seem to give the guidance that you just laid out without having us give an opinion along the same lines. So, for example, the financial interest can't exist. The appearance of impropriety and all those things, that's already there. So I'm struggling with what additional we could say as a board without knowing the facts of what you want to be involved in that would give you more specific guidance.
So you want me to tell you the topic of the petition drive?
Well, I think that those facts would definitely be important, at least from my perspective, so that I could then apply those facts to the rules, whether it's an ordinance or a canon of ethics.
So I'm hearing you say that if let's say I want to do a petition drive that's going to allow the citizens to vote on Project Trim, whether we want it to keep that in place. Project Trim is where the city forces you to trim your own trees. And people in Sioux Falls hate it. It's just an assault on, especially lower income citizens. I've been trying to get it changed. It's not happening. I've said this publicly during my campaign. I'd like to put that to a public vote. So if I decide I want to do a petition drive for Project Trim, what I'm hearing you say is I would need to come in and just put that forward to you. I wouldn't be getting any money from this, but I would be doing something to help the citizens. And I mean, maybe that's how it goes, is that we just make a determination that you have to come in, and present something before you do it.
So I asked you that question about the difference between your service as a council member and then your service in doing the petition drives. How would you explain that to a citizen who might be confused about your role? Or are you advocating this officially as a member of a legislative body, or are you advocating this as a private citizen? That would really help me, because I think there might be confusion from someone who's trying to sign something in terms of, is this being sponsored by some Sioux Falls City Council effort, or is this separate from that?
Why would
Just
that
think
be
about
any-
the average citizen who maybe isn't,
Right, but why is that any different than me coming up to you outside the courthouse and saying, hey, I'm running for city council for re-election, would you sign my petition?
See, that I think to me, that's easy to understand, that you're an individual running for office, but if you're supporting a certain effort or a certain issue, how would you explain that to a person to really help them understand your role in that process?
Probably in the same way Mark Mickelson was presenting that to people across the state last summer.
And how did he do that?
Well, he was saying this is good for our state, and I want to give you a chance to vote on it. So I guess I'd probably say I think this is going to be good for the citizens. I'd like to give you a chance to vote on it. Same way that our mayor was supporting the event center vote. He was out there doing lots of different programs and the Drake's, the Spellerberg Pool, our own Don Kearney did lots of things educating people, but being a proponent for it. That got on the ballot because they put it on the ballot. They didn't have to do a petition drive, but it was going to be voted on. So they were putting their energy into that.
But I believe though that Wanda, to your point, there's a difference between being an advocate as a council member with your point of view and where you stand on an issue. You make that publicly as part of as a counselor each week. And you continue that in your official capacity separately from that. I see it different when you're starting to get the petitions and signatures to initiate those referendums. And don't get me wrong, I'm balancing your right as a person to engage in political debate. I'm not trying to stymie that at all, but I'm trying to balance it off, and particularly with a previous opinion by the board that pretty much came right out and said in that instance on the park board matter that gathering and collecting signatures on a petition would appear to be a violation of these canons. And that precedent is what I'm trying to find a factual basis to make a different decision.
But and there again, I would just say that let's keep these separate to city council, city municipal versus, I would hope you are going to say to me, Theresa, you can't do anything statewide, and or like Councilor Christine Erickson did, getting signatures for a school board initiative. So because I'm a city council member, then that means I cannot participate in any of these other outside activities. I would.
And that's a fair point. I understand.
Yeah, I think it'd be easier for somebody to understand the difference in your role as a citizen and your role in a legislative body in a state or a county. I get that. I'm still.
Well, and let me just go back to the county commissioners though. They were out getting signatures for something they wanted to do. So why is that any different than me as a city councilor and maybe some of my comrades on the council saying, you know, we think this is important. We've initiated this. County commission did it. So, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I want to go back to this question of hypothetical. Our rules preclude us from giving advisory opinions on hypothetical cases. The more I listen, the more I am convinced that this is a hypothetical case. Because if we do not give a ruling, does not indicate in any way, shape, or manner that doing what you're talking about doing is in fact unethical. I'm not willing to hand you or anyone a get out of jail for free card that says you can go ahead and do these things without all of the facts. And that's why previous boards have refused. That's why our rules say that we don't give hypothetical. So absent specific questions, with very specific parameters, I'm not willing to bless a future activity. Now, that does not mean if you go do something and first of all, I question whether or not anybody would raise a flag and say that's unethical and file a complaint. But if they did, just because this board refused to give you an advisory opinion does not indicate that we would then find your actions unethical. It simply says that we're not going to answer hypothetical questions.
I understand what you're saying, but I would never want it to come to that. I would never want to embark on this and then have somebody raise that and then come in and because again, like I said, that is just, the media gets a hold of that. Oh, Stehly's got an ethics violation. The whole thing just collapses, okay? That's why, what I'm hearing you say, at least I'm going to say municipally, that if something comes up, I just need to get a request into you guys ASAP to say, this is the specifics of what I want to do. What do you think? right?
Well,
I mean,
along those lines, I kind of question you ask about your right. I don't know if this body is the body to tell you if you have a right to do something. I think this body assesses whether or not what you have done is ethical or not. I mean, that's my understanding of our
That's the
role.
difference between rights and rules and principles
Right,
and
yeah.
laws and ethics.
Yeah, so that's.
But advisory, and I think that, I mean, it's a good thing to define, because advisory is kind of like, I haven't done it yet, what do you think about this? You know, we're kind of, before I put my foot in the water, what do you guys think about it? Versus, do you want me to have my foot in the water and come in and say it?
It requires a level of specificity that does not exist in your request.
I agree with that. What I believe we all might be saying, at least on the board, is when you get to that point and you know specifically what kind of referendum or initiative you want to be involved in and what capacity you will engage, then you can come back prior in time and ask, based on those facts, for an opinion by us.
You talking, are we getting some kind of decision-making happening here? I mean,
I
well-
think you could see what we're struggling with.
well, I know, but I'm gonna also say, you know, that, are we talking municipally, or are we talking countywide? I mean, you're gonna differentiate between, I would love to have you say, Teresa, if you wanna do something statewide, have at it. You know, that our hands are up. Or the other thing is, if, you know, Janet Brecky was running for city council, can I circulate a petition for her? That's something that, I mean, you could say city councilors cannot circulate nominating petitions for other city council members. Is that illegal, or is that unethical? And that's why I have that on there.
Can I, first of all, separating the municipal from the school and legislators, as you mentioned, Jeff, there is a prior opinion by this board that says, it is the opinion of the board that the proposed act of collecting or gathering signatures on a petition would appear to be a violation of canons 3.3 and 7.0. I don't know that the canons have changed in that time. If this board 11 years ago determined that, to me, that would kind of answer number one. So I don't know that we have to wait for a specific on that, because we've already got that. And then the one I've been struggling over, it's the third to the last page in our packet. Section 7.02, prohibitions under the Code of Ethics. Number 5 under there says no city employee shall directly or indirectly contribute money or anything of value to or render service in behalf of the candidacy of any candidate for nomination or election to any city office. Elected officials and spouses of city employees acting on their own are exempt. Now, my question to our attorney is, does that second sentence mean elected officials aren't covered by this?
That's how I interpret it.
Okay.
I interpret that prohibition is directed at city employees,
But not
elected officials are not prohibited from that.
That was the one thing I found of a very specific nature, and so if you say that one's okay, well then, do we have an answer to number 1 if we go by the previous ruling of this board? And could we answer number 1 and then leave all the rest as hypotheticals we can't answer, or do we not want to take that step?
Just as a reminder, if we issue an advisory opinion, does not bind the board, although it would be indicative, would not necessarily bind the board to find that action as unethical if and when it heard a complaint.
Okay.
Okay? So the advisory opinion is, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that. And you know, that's what ethics is all about, is the appearance of impropriety. So if advice for someone who's lived in the ethics world for a very, very long time, if there is a question about whether something is ethical or not, you probably shouldn't do it because it probably has the appearance of impropriety. So, you know, a cautious person might look at that and say, I'm not going to do it because it might appear to be improper. What you're asking this board to do is to give you protection from somebody looking at what you're doing saying, that looks like it's unethical. And I'm not sure that we can do that. The only thing we have to depend on are rules that say we can't do hypotheticals and a previous example that says you cannot circulate. You know, because that's what the prior opinion was. So if forced to give an opinion on that, I would end up having to defer to precedent. But I would prefer to defer to, we're not going to deal with hypotheticals.
And that's for the municipal issue,
That's for all of them.
number one.
They're all hypothetical.
No, but I mean, the ruling that Sue Rouse just gave.
Oh, correct.
Yes.
Mine referred to number
She's
one.
talking about number
Correct,
one.
yes.
Yeah. So are you, but can I still keep in my back pocket the option that if I was thinking about something specifically, I could still come back and ask you for an opinion
Oh, you should.
before I'd embark on it?
That's
Yeah.
what we're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even though you kind of just said that doesn't look good.
Well,
I mean, then I would be looking for an insurance policy that, you know, if I say, hey, I'm gonna do this thing for the park board.
Yeah.
And then I come in and I say, I'm doing the park board thing, tell me what you think, and then you say, Teresa, it looks good to us.
Greg, may I on this? I mean, Greg's point on precedent is important to us as a board. We've had similar decision or a similar decision in the past that turned on the facts of that case. And as we all know, there are times where the facts, when they are different, might lead to a different conclusion. And what we're saying here is to give you an opinion today that is a blanket opinion without knowing what the facts are is impossible for us to do. The guidance given in those other opinions, the guidance given in the canons of ethics will help guide you, as Greg and Wanda and Sue have pointed out. But when you come back, when you have that concrete activity, whatever you want to do, and you come back to us and present those facts, then we will listen and apply the rules as we believe they should be.
Yeah, but that sounds fair enough. And I think it's just positive to have this conversation, because it's not only affecting me, it's affecting all of the elected people on, you know, on our city council. Then we know we can hear the parameters of this is how you go about it. But the nominating thing, I heard you say, I can help somebody with a nominating petition, right? That we just said.
The board hasn't officially made a motion on that yet.
But I mean, she brought that up when you said it wasn't.
I was giving legal
Yeah.
advice to the board, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if it would be helpful if we asked Karen Leonard to elaborate on opinion 07-1 as to how it applies to a member of the city council, as opposed to a member of the Parks Board.
Right. I'd be happy to do that. The question before the board in 07-1, it was the issue of what level of involvement can an elected official or citizen member of the park board have in the citizen petition drive that could result in a citywide election. And the board specifically stated that it was the opinion of this board that the proposed act of collecting or gathering signatures on and this word was not used in the opinion, but they were talking about a municipal petition, would appear to be in violation of Canon 3.3 and 7.0 of the Code of Ethics. 3.3 is now known as Section 34005, subsection D as in dog, found in the Code of Ordinances, and 7.0 is now known as Section 34009 sub A. To answer one of the board members' questions, that language has not changed. We just had a recodification of our code after 20 years, and so it got renumbered. The end of that opinion states, the board also encourages specifically the city council members and the mayor to also be aware of Canon 3.0 and 6.0, which are now sections 34005 sub A and 34008 sub A. So I can go through those canons, and I have those spelled out here. 35005 subsection A reads, a city council member should avoid impropriety and the appearance of impropriety in all of his or her activities. Section 34005 sub D as in dog reads, city council members should not allow family, social, or other relationships to unduly influence their conduct or judgment, and should not lend the prestige of the office of the city council member to advance the private interest of others, nor should they convey or permit others to convey the impression that they are in a special position to influence them. Section 34009, subsection A, reads, a city council member should refrain from political activity inappropriate to his or her office. And section 34, make sure I got this one right, 34008A reads, a city council member should limit his or her extragovernmental activities to minimize the risk of conflict with his or her official duties. And so that opinion from 07 did specifically point all of those canons out to a city council member anytime they're looking at this issue, and they should review those.
And 34005 section D, I think that's where I was going with my question about how would you explain your role as a council member in the process compared to your role, or differentiate that from your role as a citizen in the process of gathering signatures. So talking about should not lend the prestige of the office of city council member to advance the private interest of others. So, you know, I think it would be important, again, this is hypothetical, so it's hard, but to articulate that as you would share any specific example.
Right, but again, I'm comparing it with the county commission's own petition drive. Were they using their office to, I mean, they were county commissioners, it was their county commission initiative, they were circulating petitions. You don't get any more using your office than that.
And that's why I feel like it's apples and oranges, state, county, I mean, we're talking about.
Well, no, but I'm talking about, but there again, so it's elected officials doing something. So if it's ethical for them to do it, but it's not ethical for me as a city council member to do it. So I have less rights than they did, I guess.
Just because we're not willing to, it doesn't appear that we may not be willing to give you a prospective opinion on a hypothetical, don't confuse that with saying that what we're saying is what you're doing will be unethical. That's not at all what this board would be saying in refusing to give you a prospective opinion. Those are not the same.
You mean right now?
Today, correct.
Right.
Yeah.
As it sits today.
Mr. Chairman.
Good. Well, yeah, I'm so happy that you're saying that, because you're leaving the door a little bit open so that I could maybe come back again. And let me just also say that opinion was back, it happened to be with the Drake Springs pool. And I will tell you that the city councilors after this formed a committee, Citizens for an Indoor Pool. They put money in, they hired Georgia Hansen as a consultant. I was leading this other end of it. We didn't spend anything. But so that was after this was said. And so there's always kind of a flexibility and a fluidity happening, and opinions change. So just because something was back then doesn't mean that it can't change. And we may have a new city attorney. That person might say, Theresa, they might change everything, you know. So it doesn't hurt to ask. I'm so grateful that I came today. Thank you for listening, and I feel encouraged.
Are you ready for a motion, Mr.
I am
Chairman?
ready for a motion.
I move that we deny providing an opinion based on the fact that we find the questions to be hypothetical, and that we refer the petitioner to previous case 0701 for guidance.
Do we have a second?
Second the motion. Second the motion.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Discussion, please?
Can I ask to have that reread?
Carrie, could you reread that for us, please?
I'll give it a shot. Move that we deny providing an opinion based on the fact that we find the question to be hypothetical, and that we refer petitioner to the previous opinion 07-1
May I suggest?
for guidance.
I don't know if it needs to be an amendment. The word deny sounds harsh to me. Could we say decline?
Decline is a better word.
Or refrain from offering an opinion? May I offer one other suggestion? If that's, I don't know if this is necessarily part of the rules, but you used the term hypothetical. Should we also include the phrase that the questions posed present insufficient facts and therefore is a hypothetical? Since we struggled so much with the definition of hypothetical?
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to do that, Mr. Chairman, though, because our rules simply use the word hypothetical. And I don't see that we add anything to it by modifying that word. We may only confuse it because it doesn't align with what our rules are, so I'd prefer to not do that, but you could make a motion to amend it once we are ready.
I'm only thinking along the lines of someone reading this in the future and questioning the term hypothetical, and if we added the phrase that it didn't present the necessary facts, and it was therefore hypothetical, that might provide guidance, but I will leave it to the group.
If this is helpful to the board, how your rules read is the request shall be in writing and state specifically the facts at issue. And so there is.
Already says that.
And that's the section that says no hypothetical questions will be considered by the board.
That's right, section 2.03.
Okay. So with that, I know it was reread. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Check second.
Jack second. Sorry,
I
Jack.
seconded.
Sorry. With any further discussion?
So are we, is the original wording being revised to indicate that we declined rather than rather than rejected?
Carrie, do you want to read it back? Please.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to use the term decline or refrain from. Did you agree
Decline.
on which version?
The word I said was decline.
Decline, okay. Move to decline.
Gary, could you read the motion as with the revised language?
Certainly. Greg moved to decline to provide an opinion based on the fact that we find the question to be hypothetical and that we refer petitioner to previous opinion 07-1 for guidance.
Seeing that it was moved and seconded, let's take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's passed. We'll need to have now a motion that direct Acting City Attorney Karen Leonard to draft an opinion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, opposed? Motion passed. I believe that with no further matters before the
We had one more
One more?
technical detail here. A lot of times you would authorize your legal advisor, Karen Leonard, to draft the opinion on behalf of the board and authorize the board chair to sign that opinion as drafted on behalf of the board. Would you like to revise your motion?
Yeah. We have a revised motion. Alderman Sly?
Yes. So moved.
I'd second that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. passed. Is there any additional business? If none, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's